We're going to talk about how to prep your Miata for boost, especially older Miatas, higher mileage Miatas. How can you tell that your Miata is ready for this, and how can you make sure that everything's going to be successful? So that's going to be our goal for today. If you do enjoy this kind of video content, make sure to like our channel, make sure to like the videos, subscribe to our channel, all the usual thing. And during this video, if you have questions, please put them in the comments. We will answer them in the comments, or we'll answer them live. If you're watching this sometime in the future, please put them in the comments. We do read every comment that comes in on the channel, and if you have questions, we will do our best to answer them. Also, of course, we do have a whole bunch of dedicated technicians on hand ready to answer your questions if you contact us by phone or by email or by any of the many other ways that you can contact tech support at Flyin Miata. So lots of ways to get your questions answered, including live during this video. Now, one note for those of you who are watching this live, yes, we are filming it in portrait. It is a vertical video. There's a bunch of reasons for that. YouTube likes it. There's a certain group of people who like to watch videos on their phones. They like it. We are also filming it in 4K in widescreen. We will release that in a day or so. So if you are cranky about the vertical video, I apologize. We will have the horizontal one for you before too long. One other piece of news before I get going is that we are talking about turbochargers today, and there's a reason. It's topical. We do have a bunch of turbochargers that will be coming into stock tomorrow. That's Friday the 15th. Friday the 15th. We're going to try to arrange to get those in stock right around 10 o'clock Mountain Time. You can do the math as to what your particular time zone is, but we do have several dozen turbos coming into stock. There's a bunch more we'll be following shortly afterwards, but there are going to be turbos available for sale tomorrow. Okay, so the first thing before I get started on how to prep your car, I'm going to point out that we have a full installation series on our YouTube channel talking about how to install the Flyin Miata turbo kits. I recommend you take a look at those. We have them for the NDs, we have them for the NAs and NBs. The NC one we're still filming, but that's okay because you don't have one of those to install yet. We're still working on getting those into stock here. So if you do have questions about how to install a turbo kit, I would point you to those because they're very good installation guides to tell you what's going on. So the stuff we're talking about here today is mostly, you've got yourself a stock Miata. It's an older one. This is a very old one, of course, but you know, it might be 5 years old, it might be 25 years old. How do you make sure it's healthy and ready to take forced induction? And I say forced induction because this applies not only to turbochargers, but to superchargers as well. No matter how you add boost to your car, these same rules apply. And you know, the question we often get is, how many miles is too many miles? You know, how many, I have a car with this many miles, is it safe to put a turbo on? And the answer is maybe. The actual mileage, I mean, we've had customers, we've got a customer who we were trying to decide this earlier. We're not sure how many miles he has on his engine. We know that it had a turbocharger on it. We swapped the engine. It was at 300,000 miles. Had the short nose crank failure, nothing to do with the turbo. And he had to have the head done at 400,000 something miles. And we think he's still in the stock bottom end. We actually haven't touched up with Ed for a while, so I'm not sure what his mileage is, but he got well over 300,000 miles on a stock engine, stock head, stock bottom end, untouched. You know, starting in 1991. Obviously, it takes a couple of years to do that sort of thing. But high mileage is not necessarily the kiss of death for a turbo engine, either starting off that way, or if you've got an engine that already has 300,000 on it, can you turbo it and still have it be reliable? Yes, you can. Ed used to drive his car back and forth across the country. He'd drive from New York to Flyin Miata for the summer camp every year, and then he'd go home by way of California. Look at a map. He needs a better map. He once went home by way of Alaska, but that's the sort of reliability you can't expect even with a high mileage turbo car. So there's two kinds of failures that you can sort of prepare yourself for. And this is important information to know. You have catastrophic failures, boom, tinkle, tinkle, big cloud of smoke, nothing works anymore. And you have sort of accelerated wear. And the big concern people have is if they try to put a turbo on a higher mileage engine, are they going to have the big kaboom? And the answer is you shouldn't. Most of it comes down to tuning. If there's a catastrophic failure, it's not because something has a lot of miles on it and it's getting tired. It means that you went beyond the strength limits of the engine, probably due to detonation. Could be due to poor tuning, could be due to a poor choice of fuel, could be due to because it's so much fun running 8 PSI, let's try 9, let's try 10, let's try 15, until everything goes boom, tinkle, tinkle. That sort of failure is rarely affected by the mileage on the engine. That is the sort of thing that's going to happen whether you got a brand new engine or whether you've got an old one that's been around the block for a few years. Catastrophic failures come from something else. Accelerated wear, there's not that much accelerated wear from a turbo system. As you can see from the example of Ed, over 300,000 on a stock engine, you're doing well getting that out of a naturally aspirated stock one as well. So there's really not a lot of accelerated wear, again, assuming it's well set up and you're not stressing the engine in unusual ways by starving it of fuel or starving it of oil. That's a good way to kill an engine. You're not maintaining it properly, oil leaks are not being attended, that sort of thing. So let's start with the first things to do. You've got yourself a stock, older Miata. I'm using an NA for an example here, simply because literally it was parked here when we set up for the video. This could be an NB, NC, could be an ND, because NDs are getting up there in years, but some of them. No matter what it is, the first thing you need to do is just take care of your maintenance. Just get the car into its best place as a naturally aspirated car. If your timing belt is overdue, then putting a turbo on will not fix that. It will be easier to install the timing belt before you do the other modifications, so get that done. If it's time for oil changes, it's time for transmission fluid, take care of all that stuff. Make sure your hoses are in good shape. All these sort of things that you need to do to make sure that your car is reliable and healthy anyway, do it before you put the turbo on and you start stressing it. Also, you're going to want to just make sure you address any known problems. If you have drivability problems, weird idle, for example, it's much easier to try to diagnose that on a stock engine than it is on one that's been modified, because you're never sure if the idle problem is because of what you just did to it or if it was there beforehand. This particular car, when I first got it, had a couple of different idle problems, for example. If I'd tried to do a turbocharger when that was on there, I would have had all sorts of weird drivability. I had to fix them first before I could even consider doing anything to it. Also, I would recommend, if the car is older, consider cleaning the injectors. Over time, they do start to gum up effectively. Their spray patterns get worse. It's not as much of a concern when you're making 116 horsepower. If you're making 180 horsepower, you're putting a little more stress on things. You're closer to the limits. It's a good idea to get that done. This is all what I consider to be maintenance on a higher mileage engine regardless. And as I said, fix things. We need to check the engine out. Check the engine out. Make sure that it's healthy. For example, if you're burning oil, if you're leaving a cloud of smoke, oil is very low octane, and low octane is a bad combination with turbocharging. So that is a situation where a worn engine, one that is blowing a lot of oil smoke, that is trying to combust oil, could potentially have a catastrophic failure, because you're going to have a lot of knock because that oil doesn't burn properly, and knock is a good way to have a catastrophic engine failure. So definitely address any outstanding issues. Oil leaks, turbos aren't going to fix that. It's embarrassing to park your turbo car and have it pee on the floor, but they're unlikely to cause an actual detonation. Oil usage is another problem. So we've got our engine. How do we want to make sure that it's actually healthy inside? Maybe we just bought the car. I actually did an entire video on how to make your new to you Miata happy and healthy. That's on our channel. Check it out. This was actually the car that was used in it. But you want to go through and make sure that all the hoses are flexible, that everything is in good shape, it is healthy. And then if you want to make sure that things are healthy inside, that's when you'll do a compression check. Compression checks are easy to do. The only tool you need is a compression tester and something to remove a spark plug. And then you just use a starter on the car to basically spin the engine and check to see what the compression of each cylinder is. And the most important thing for a compression test, and the easiest way to do it, people get obsessed over, well, it's 195, should it be 200, or is it 180 PSI? The thing that I always look for is consistency. You want to have no more than a few % difference between cylinders. If all of your cylinders are showing 185, there's always some variation in compression test results anyway, but if you're seeing consistent numbers all the way across the board, you've got a pretty healthy engine. If you see something like 180, 180, 72, 180, well, obviously you have a problem. Not a good idea to turbocharge that engine. There's no compression in the third cylinder. We need to take care of that first, because it's not going to get better by putting a turbocharger on. You can also do a leak down test, and that involves, it needs a few more tools. You need an air compressor. I personally am not a big believer in leak down tests because I have seen way too many false negatives. I've seen way too many really good results on engines that I knew were on their very last legs. Because what can happen if there's a lot of oil in the cylinder, that can actually help seal things, and you can get really good leak down results on an engine that is just barely being held together and has no rings left at all. Been there, done that. So you can always do a leak down test, but a good leak down test is not necessarily a good indication. A bad leak down test, obviously that will tell you something. It will tell you, for example, if you have a leak from your combustion chamber to your cooling system, a blown head gasket. I was doing a leak down test one time on an old Cadillac. I heard a weird gurgling system in the cooling system. I said, "What? This is weird." Took off the radiator cap, and of course I had pressurized the radiator to 100 psi or so, and that was messy. So don't do that. So you can get a limited amount of information from leak down, but it won't tell you everything. I find the compression test to be more useful. Okay, so we've checked it out. We think things are pretty healthy. Do we have any questions back there, guys?
We're doing okay for right now.
Oh, doing okay for questions? All right, so we've been through our car. We're up on top of our maintenance. We know everything is healthy. It doesn't have any problems that we're aware of. There's no check engine lights. There's no components complaining about things. There's no weird noises. We know we're in good shape to go and start with the actual turbo installation. Now, my recommendation with this is something I recommend to anybody who is planning on modifying a car, and that is have a plan. It's always a good idea to know what you're building before you start building it, because that will stop you from going down expensive dead ends. It will give you a more cohesive end result. You'll be able to look at it and say, yes, all of these things make sense. And it will also allow you to do the work in a reasonable order, one that actually makes sense to it. So for example, there's no point in throwing your turbo system on if it's going to overwhelm your stock clutch and you still have the stock clutch in there. For one, it's easier to change the clutch while you're halfway through the turbo system because you've got the exhaust off, but there's no point in running around with an engine that will completely overwhelm your clutch if you knew that going in. So I recommend making your plan and then addressing all of the weak points before you turbocharge. So again, the clutch is a great example. You're probably going to have to replace the clutch on pretty much any of our turbo systems, most supercharger systems as well. Honestly, it's a point of pride if you can produce too much power for a stock clutch. That's a good thing, too much torque. So get that done first, because nothing's worse than finishing your turbo install, going out for your first test drive, and all of a sudden the first time you hit boost in third gear, the engine revs goes woo, and the drive goes away, and now you have to put the car back in the garage until you can replace the clutch. So get that done. Also, if you are building a particularly, one that is going to be run hard, or you have some weak points, address things like the cooling system. Get that up to good shape, unless you have a specific plan. That's one you can drive around a little bit more, but again, if your ultimate plan is to install, upgraded cooling like we've got here with enormous fans and cross-flow radiators, get that done ahead of time. It will make your life easier, and again, with the initial test drive, you won't have to worry about monitoring overheating problems when you know that it's something you're liable to face. It is possible to run a turbo system on a stock radiator. You are definitely going to be marginal, but in some situations you can deal with it. Similarly, suspension. If you have your stock suspension is completely burned up, you have no damping left, your bushings are pointing your wheels all over the place, adding 100% more power is not necessarily going to improve that. Your car will still have sketchy suspension. So it's a good idea, make sure you address that first so that the first time you go up for that test drive, you hit boost for the first time, you don't go into a ditch. I know I'm taking away all the fun. You want to put your turbo on right away. Come on, turbocharge. But you'll just have a better time if you try to prepare the rest of the car first. Another thing as well, if you're going to be running an aftermarket ECU, none of our kits use an aftermarket ECU. However, if you are running that way, I recommend putting the ECU in first before you install a turbocharger, so you can learn how it works, you can get comfortable. Again, you can set up the idle, which is much harder than full throttle stuff. You can set up the AC compensation without the added complication of going, am I working around the turbocharger, or is the ECU tuned incorrectly? So if you are going to do an aftermarket programmable ECU, I recommend getting that in, learn how to use it, get it tuned in all of the non-boosted rows, so that you've got it well set up before you add the added distraction of boosting. Mike, do we have a question over there?
We're doing pretty good
We're doing all right. Okay. I'm going through this pretty fast, honestly. There's not a huge amount to talk about. Basically, make sure it's all healthy and have a plan. That's the entire video. I'm stretching it out. One of the questions that we got was, what's the priority, having a super clean chassis or a healthy engine? From the viewpoint of the turbo system, it's all about the engine. You could install it on a chassis made out of just random pieces of metal, which we have actually done here for our dyno. The turbo system doesn't care about the condition of the chassis. It can be covered in rust, whatever. For the turbo system, all that matters is you have a good drivetrain. If you're looking to build a good Miata, well, I mean, obviously it's nice having a really clean cherry chassis, nice interior, that sort of thing. For the purpose of our video, we don't care. We're just interested in the oily stuff that makes noise. So in our priority right now, it's all about the engine. The other one is what things fail on high mileage turbo Miatas. And this is not so much a pre-installation thing. This is more, say, so you've purchased a Miata with some history. It was turbocharged back in 2017 or something like that. And you want to know what to do, what to look for, what should you be aware of. And most of the turbo system doesn't have a lot of consumables in it. Stuff just works. The big thing that has always proven to be an issue over time is usually the turbo oil drain. You want to keep track of those hoses. If they start to degrade, they'll start leaking oil. That makes a mess. Oil's flammable. There's no good reason for you to have a leaky oil drain. So I recommend staying on top of that. And also make sure that all the connections are secure, that all of the actual hoses are in good shape. You can't see many of them here. Some of the older systems that were on the market, quite a bit older, some of the Bell Engineering systems, for example, they used multiple pieces of steel, powder-coated steel hose connected with, or pipe connected with silicone couplers, and those couplers would degrade over time, and the pipes would get rust on the inside. So as they get older, you're going to want to take a look inside their piping, make sure they're in good shape, make sure that all of your connections are nice and secure so they don't blow off under boost. The new Flyin Miata turbo kits have far fewer connections in them than those older ones do. Or say you've found a car that's got an eBay turbo system that's made up of 37 different pieces of pipe and couplers, you're going to spend a lot of time on hose clamps. But generally speaking, there's not much that needs to be maintained on a turbocharger specifically. Just make sure that everything's in good shape. You know, one place that can get you in trouble is the wastegate signal line. That is the thing that opens and closes, basically controls the boost level. This takes a signal from effectively the intake manifold. If this hose develops a hole or comes off, you will effectively have unlimited boost, which will be really, really fun for a short period of time. And then it will be expensive. So, you know, make sure all of your hoses, everything is in good shape. And that's basically all you have to do to maintain an older turbo. If you do have an older, we did have one question. I bought a turbo kit, 2017 FM2. What should I upgrade? There may not be that much. Contact us. We'll help you with your specific questions. If you've just bought a kit from 2001, there's certainly a lot more parts that can be upgraded. 2017, our turbo kits have not really evolved that much or have not changed that much. There have been small detail changes, not necessarily ones that you're going to need to tear a bunch of things out to replace. But we do try to keep all of our upgrades backwards compatible so that, for example, if you have a Bell Engineering turbo system from 1998 and you want to run our current intercooler system with much better piping, more efficient intercooler, lighter weight, etc., that will bolt on. So we'll help you out with all that if you have questions. Mike, do we have anything over there?
Questions about our turbos, the Garrett turbos. Can you talk about reliability or things to watch out for with our Garrett turbos?
I thought I just did. The question is reliability and things to watch out for our Garrett turbos. We use Garretts in all of our turbo kits. The turbocharger itself, don't let it eat things it's not supposed to eat. That's the biggest way to take care of a turbocharger. Make sure you don't run without an intake filter, because nothing turbos hate more than foreign object debris. So yeah, don't let it eat things it's not supposed to eat. Make sure that your water lines and your oil lines are in good shape, they're not leaking. And there's really not much to do to a turbocharger. Again, we go back to our friend Ed. I'm not sure what the lifespan of that turbo is going to be, because it's probably got 500,000 miles on it by this point. It's still happy and healthy. Turbos last a very long time. These are not variable vane turbos, which does make them simpler. There have not been a lot of applications of variable vane turbos on Miata. The old, what was it called? not the Autorotor. Aerodyne. Aerodyne had a variable vane turbocharger back around the turn of the century. I don't think any of those are still running. They had a very high mortality rate. These Garrett things are almost bomb-proof. There's very little you can do to hurt one, other than starving it of oil or feeding it BBs and rocks. So there we go. Any more questions over there, Mike?
They want to hear it.
They want to hear it? Okay, you have keys for a car there? All right, it's not going to sound like a whole lot, because they don't make boost at idle. Turbos make boost in response to load, so I'm not going to be able to load it up enough to make any noise. But hey, why not? There we go. That is an idling NB2 Miata. They don't sound like a whole lot, honestly. I can't make the blow-off valve make cool noises here. A little bit of one. Yeah, poor little roller girl. I'm not going to torture roller girl too much by revving it cold, but yeah, you close the hood, honestly, you can't really tell there's a turbocharger in there. They don't make a lot of weird noises. When you're driving around, that's when you get the puffs and hisses and psh noises, but we can't do that here in the shop. We'll have to do a drive video for you for that one. There we go, Mike. All right, good. Yes, now finally the internet has video of a turbo Miata. All right, so that's about all I've got going on for today. If you do have any questions, specifically if you have questions about your particular car, you know, it's got this setup, it's got this setup, it's this old, this thing happened, there's a rod sticking on the side of the block, whatever, we'd be happy to help answer your questions. You can put them in the comments, but you'll get better, quicker, more thorough responses if you contact us directly, either by email or by phone, Facebook message, our chat on our website. Instagram. Yeah, it's hard to have a good conversation on Instagram, but anyway, whatever your media of choice is, we will do our best to answer your questions there. YouTube comments are probably at the bottom of the list, unfortunately, just because, yeah, there can be a lot of noise. Anyway, if you like this kind of thing, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to like the video. We'll make sure that you hear about more videos like this one. We will continue to produce more videos like this one. We do a live video every week. Plus, of course, we're constantly updating things like installation videos, technical information videos about a number of our products, including the upcoming NC turbo system, which we are filming a whole bunch of technical deep dive videos on that thing right now, so that when it comes to market in a few months, we will have it to show you. Anyhow, my name is Keith Tanner. Thanks for your attention, and happy boosting.